Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for tuning in. I'm going to read you an Associated Press article, which is exactly the reason why really nobody on the left would ever debate me on Trump, why Trump is a great president, why Democrats are a better alternative, why Beto 2020 is a better alternative to Trump, because I would eviscerate them. And I would simply read this Supreme Court inaction suggests DACA safe until 2020. Suggests DACA safe until 2020, which it goes on to say that it's not safe until 2020. The Supreme Court could strike it down later this year or next year. Do you think that Nancy Pelosi is concerned about the 2 million dreamers? I have friends who are dreamers. I am a Trump supporter. They tell me, I hope President Trump helps me. So they're not saying, I hope Nancy. You think dreamers are saying, I hope Nancy Pelosi gives me a path to citizenship? No, they're not saying that. They want somebody to defend them, to represent their interests. Their interests are actually citizenship, not just DACA. DACA is just to keep them safe here and allowing them to do things. But the ultimate goal is citizenship. Why isn't Pelosi saying, oh, well, you know what? If you want 5 billion or if you want 20 billion, give us citizenship for 2 million people. She's not saying that. And I understand the Ann Coulter no amnesty, but it's part of negotiation. To my super chat, thank you so much. You give me every incentive to rock these live streams. So President Trump offered a deal that at least should have been addressed, negotiated, at least if Democrats care about undocumented immigrants, they should have at least negotiated. They should have at least negotiated. Again, they should have at least negotiated, but they don't want to. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want an ultimate goal of citizenship. What they want is people to vote for them without any promise of addressing their objectives, their policy objectives, which in this case is citizenship for undocumented immigrants. When have you heard that Democrats are going to give citizenship to undocumented immigrants? All you hear about is Trump Russia and BuzzFeed getting told literally by Mueller that, oh, they were inaccurate in their allegation. But I'll read you the Obama-era program that shields young immigrants. By the way, the Associated Press always leaves out that Obama deported 2.5 million undocumented immigrants. The Obama-era program that shields young immigrants from deportation and that President Trump has sought to end seems likely to survive for at least another year. That is not something you want to hear if you're a dreamer. It's not something you want to hear. Oh, it's likely to survive. The best thing Pelosi can do to her constituents is say, well, this program is likely to survive, but we're not even going to negotiate with Trump. That's because the Supreme Court took no action Friday on the Trump administration's request to decide by early summer whether Trump's bid to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program was legal. The program has been protected by several federal courts. But the Supreme Court is going to hear it either the end of this year or the beginning of 2020. November 2020 is the election. So this actually, Democrats are, if they don't protect DACA, they're in for a world of trouble. If the Supreme Court in the beginning of 2020 says, oh yeah, it's not constitutional, that it's not congressional legislation, it's actually from the executive branch and another executive branch wants to end it, then what happens? Based on the High Court's usual practices, the earliest the justice would hear the arguments in the case would be this fall. So it could be fall 2019. So people were telling me, well, HA, He doesn't. They don't have to. They don't have to negotiate with Trump. They don't have to negotiate with Trump. They could simply, she doesn't have to. You take his offer. His offer is not a good offer. DACA's protected. No, DACA is not protected. DACA is not protected. It is in limbo. It's up in the air, and the Supreme Court will decide. So again, this is petulance. It's important, even if you disagree with me, if you're a Trump supporter like I am, and you disagree with me, you have a more of a hardline stance on immigration. I have more of a progressive stance on immigration, although I do want Trump's wall built because it impedes and will prevent and will stop the flow of illegal narcotics, trafficking of all types. But listen to this. Based on the high court's usual practices, the earliest the justices would hear the arguments in the case would be this fall if they decide to hear the case at all. If arguments take place in October, a decision would not be likely. Okay, so would not be likely. The decision could take place before the presidential campaign. Again, Nancy Pelosi is simply rolling the dice. Simply rolling the dice. And it doesn't even matter if it doesn't take place until after 2020. Why, if you're a Democratic leader, are you just taking chances on the lives of hundreds of thousands of young people? My point, you have to look at it this way, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just about being promoting a hardline stance on immigration. They're going to have to negotiate. They're going to have to negotiate on a deal eventually. Pelosi is pretending that she doesn't have to negotiate. But even if Agent Pepsi won. HA, you're missing it. Dems are a total loss. They have always dictated policy, and the GOP has always caved. Dems believe their own propaganda. No, I agree with you. I agree with you on that. Agent Pepsi won. I agree with you. What I'm saying, though, is this. There's a political dynamic at place that continually harms Democratic voters. Democrats have given their allegiance to a political party. Voters have given their allegiance to a political party that doesn't do anything for them, does not do anything for them, and acts in a contrary manner to their alleged value system. In this case, immigration, they're not pushing for any giant comprehensive immigration reform. Well, I mean, we can go, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not drafting Medicare for all legislation. Nancy Pelosi won't even discuss the future of DACA. So let's just say that people are the people who don't want Pelosi to negotiate with Trump are right, and it won't take place until the Supreme Court won't rule until after 2020. So let's say they rule in 2021 that it's unconstitutional, and Democrats lose the election like they did in 2016, which they will. If things continue the way they're going, Trump will win. He has to do a couple of things before that. He has to flip the script with William Barr. There have to be investigations of the uranium deal, of Clinton email, the Clinton email debacle where she transferred top secret and special access program intelligence outside of the United States government. But President Trump is presiding over peace between North and South Korea. He wants to bring home close to 10,000 Americans from two conflicts that Democrats want to keep those Americans in. President Trump has presided over the creation of 400,000 manufacturing jobs, whereas 300,000 were lost under Obama. So we can go on and on. But my point here is the immigration policies of Democrats have nothing to do with bettering their constituents, bettering the lives of their constituents. It's just like Medicare for all. It's just like abolish ICE. It's just like everything else. aside from certain core ideals that the Democratic Party always just latches onto. But for the majority, the Democratic Party doesn't do anything. It's just a political party and a money-making scheme for politicians on the left as they try to live through Twitter and grow a foundation or a base or market themselves through Twitter. The issue that everyone should be looking at, and the issue that people don't really see, is that Democrats have a chance here to help the lives of people they claim should vote for them. Instead of doing that, they're saying, well, you know, it could be the end of 2019 or 2020, and the ruling would be in 2021. We're just going to roll the dice. And if the Supreme Court rules against us, oh, so be it. If the Supreme Court in 2021, and if Trump gets reelected, if the Supreme Court rules against DACA, we'll have zero leveraging power, and we'll have absolutely no chance to get citizenship for Dreamers. But we won't give him his wall. His wall is immoral, but a fence is okay. This is the issue. The issue is the Democratic Party does not need logic from its voters. The Democratic Party needs loyalty, just obedience and loyalty from voters and constituents. They don't have to perform. The difference here is that Trump knows he will lose in 2020 if he does not get the wall. He will lose. He'll lose. If he doesn't get the wall, he'll almost certainly lose. If he doesn't get the wall, he'll almost certainly lose. He needs to get funding for the wall, so he is representing for his constituents. Now, you had Paul Ryan for 2 years, and you had people in Congress. You had Republicans. One of the reasons the Republicans lost the House, and I didn't think that Democrats would be able to deceive their voters yet again, but Bernie Sanders was a big part of that, pushing the Russia myth, saying that Medicare for All is going to be just around the corner. The first thing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez does is fund ICE by voting to fund the Department of Homeland Security. No one's drafting Medicare for All legislation or a green economy legislation for green. No one's drafting. They don't even have a bill that they're talking about. That's how, and I didn't think voters would be deceived, but whatever. But if Paul Ryan actually helped Trump build the wall, Republicans likely would have kept Congress because voters would have been, Republican voters and Trump voters would have been energized. That didn't happen. Yet again, they shot themselves in the foot. Yet again, they thought that they could deviate from President Trump's platform and then just say, well, you know, it doesn't work that way. The Republican Party 10 out of 10 times will lose. You take any establishment Republican, Mitt Ryan, Mitt Romney, you could just have a Mitt Ryan. Inga Hicks, thank you. Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, Jeff Flake, John Kasich. I love Rand Paul, but even Rand Paul can't win because his appeal is not broad enough. You take, and he's not an establishment, but you take any Republican aside from Trump, and they will lose to Beto 2020. They will lose to any Democrat because Democrats have the media, they have Hollywood, they have late night, they have every single aspect. They have Twitter, they have Facebook, they have every single aspect. They have most pundits on YouTube. And then the pundits that, well, there are all these fabricated, ridiculous examples of outrage today. I'm not going to get into. But establishment Republicans will lose 10 out of 10 times, and they don't get it. They don't get it. They think that they don't have to help Trump. They think that Trump is an anomaly. They actually do think that like, um, Jimmy Kimmel loves them. That if they go on late night or The View and they say bad things about Trump, or like they go on MSNBC and they just tell the country how. Lindsey Graham is guilty of this also. I like Lindsey Graham, but Lindsey Graham goes back and forth. When Trump create Wingless Angel, we love you. Wingless Angel. When Lindsey Graham, when President Trump took the keys out of the bus and told them they couldn't go on their field trip, their wonderful field trip, Lindsey Graham said, well, one bad deed doesn't call for another, or whatever he said. Two wrongs don't make a right. Well, thanks, Lindsey. How about just, how about just that's not even egregious or in any manner, in any way, shape, or form. That's not a problem. It was actually amazing what they did. Then you have the BuzzFeed report that Mueller himself called inaccurate. Mueller himself called inaccurate. And there you go. Mueller himself called that report inaccurate. I mean, how many losses can you get? How many losses can you get? And I, honestly, it's like nothing. I'm telling you, like nothing. Nothing makes them realize that all their cheating and fabricating of the Trump-Russia myth, all of that stuff, they'll never, ever, ever realize that at the end of the day, they just care about political power because they have so many people shielding them from reality. You have Bernie Sanders, who was cheated. And all Bernie had to do was say, hey, look, I was cheated. This is a corrupt political organization. Patricia Moreno. Thank you. Patricia Moreno, thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. Hope you're having a great Sunday. They don't care about actually negotiating. That's my point. That's my long-winded point. They don't even want to talk to Trump because they don't think that he's a legitimate president because they've convinced themselves he's not. Whereas he is. The people who did collude with Russia, 20% of U.S. uranium capacity, Bill Clinton meeting with Vladimir Putin at his home in 2010 after Bill Clinton asked to speak to a Russian nuclear energy official. That's according to Newsweek. After money, cash, millions flowed to the Clinton Foundation. And then what a coincidence. The uranium deal was approved. Oh, by all the wonderful agencies headed by Obama appointees who were absolutely loyal to Obama, who would never have resigned, who would never have protested any Obama decision because that does not happen in the Democratic Party. Do you think Sally Yates protested the deportation of 2.5 million immigrants? Do you think Sally Yates protested the failed intervention in Libya that destroyed a country? Do you think Sally Yates protested what took place at Standing Rock? No. Let's not get into that. The duplicity rears its ugly head every single day. You think anyone protests anything that took place, any of the left, the outrage, the professional outrage? Susan, I agree. Twitter, by the way, is the only thing keeping the Democratic Party alive. Not even Hollywood or late night or, not really, because people have already tuned out Hollywood. They already know that, it's the duplicity's there. They already know Hollywood is just a bunch of hypocritical, rich, elitist, backstabbing, phony liberals. Twitter really is actually the only thing keeping the Democratic Party afloat. Which is, I'm so glad I left Twitter, because all it is an echo chamber where sadly the loudest voices are the same people who cheated Bernie Sanders. And even Bernie Sanders can't come to can't accept the reality that he was cheated. His voters were defrauded of $200 million. The Democrats illegally obtained $200 million from his voters by stating numerous times that it was a fair and neutral primary. And then what did Bernie Sanders do? He then says, "Oh, it was Russia. It was Russia who informed everyone I was cheated because that was their plan to hurt poor Hillary." Rams 10-20, down 10. It's at New Orleans, though. At New Orleans, it's tough. It is tough. At New Orleans is tough. Let's see what's going on here. 2 TDs. Wow, for Drew Brees. So, anyway, Rams can come back, but hopefully they do. But they don't want to. They don't want to negotiate. And at a certain, this is the thing. At what point do you say, look, at what point do you say Trump has to just simply declare a national emergency and just let a conservative Supreme Court? Because you can do that. He can go ahead and do that. He can, and then use the DOD unobligated funds. National Emergencies Act of 1976. The act did not give a legal definition for a national emergency, nor did it set specific criteria for declaring one. Rather, it created procedural requirements. It requires the president to formally submit to Congress and to the Federal Register a declaration of the national emergency to specify the statutory authorities he or she is invoking, and to renew the declaration every year. Even though the Constitution itself grants the president very little in the way of emergency authority, Congress has ceded broad powers to the president that he can invoke merely by claiming that an emergency exists. So let him do that. Let him do that. It wouldn't actually declare an end to the government shutdown, by the way. This is actually PolitiFact, which is an article that's actually helping Trump. Does declaring a national emergency automatically end a government shutdown? No. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The end of the current shutdown depends on Congress and the president reaching an agreement to reopen government. Whether and how funding is allocated for Trump's wall is significant. A part of that. Okay, if the budget impasse were broken, then the shutdown would end. So it's actually about. So he could theoretically start building the wall and then refuse through a national emergency, through declaring a national emergency at the border, use the DoD unobligated funds, the Department of Defense unobligated funds to fund the wall. There's like hundreds of billions there. And still continue with the shutdown. I mean, at what point did Democrats realize they're not getting anything for their voters? They are not getting anything for their voters. If Trump declared a national emergency, experts said he might rely on U.S. Code Section 2808 and 33 U.S. Code 2293. In very broad terms, they concern the use of the armed forces to undertake military construction projects and the termination or deferment of Army civil works projects. So that is this is amazing green tea. It's fantastic. In broad terms, they concern the use of armed forces to undertake military construction projects and the deferment of Army civil works projects and using those resources to undertake the construction essential to the national defense. This is a national security issue. This is a national security issue. If you utilize money from the Department of Defense, Ike80, yes. If you utilize the Department of Defense, declare a national emergency, he could definitely do that. Interestingly enough, look at this. We've had 33 national emergencies. How many under Clinton? 17 under Clinton. 17, 12 under, and 13 under Obama. Interesting. Let's see. So if you read all of this, it's like almost all of these aren't as important as protecting people at the border. So, and of course, somebody agrees with me, Representative Biggs, national emergency would be a far better option than government shutdown. But what he should do, though, is ensure that the Supreme Court uphold. So it would be challenged. A national emergency would be challenged by the courts. He's going to have to, even if the national emergency over wall could be challenged in court. So he could declare a national emergency. He could start using funds but it would be challenged by the Supreme Court. Under the National Emergencies Act of 1976, presidents do have the authority to declare crises and act on them, but they have to justify their reasoning with existing statutes Congress has already approved. Experts have identified more than 100. Wow. Experts at New York University Brennan Center have identified more than 130, he could argue, two of which, U.S. Code 2808 and Title 33 U.S. Code 2293, are specific to appropriating funding to build structures essential to national security. If Trump went through with it, there would be little Congress could do to stop him. Overriding a veto requires a 2/3 supermajority in both chambers of Congress. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. So that would ultimately get to the Supreme Court. That would actually have to be, well, which courts would try to stop that? Legal obstacles await Trump. If Trump declares national emergency for wall. So let's see. Legal obstacles await if Trump declares emergency for all. President Trump so it's unclear. Legal experts say the law could be interpreted in different ways. What constitutes a national emergency? What challenge the declaration? Who could challenge the declaration in court? To have standing in court, a plaintiff would need to show they have been injured by Trump's emergency declaration and that their injury could be rectified by a favorable decision from the court. No. House Democrats could bring the case, but they would have to prove that they were injured. Wow. In 1952, President Truman famously declared a national emergency and ordered the Secretary of Commerce to take possession of and operate most of the country's steel mills after its workers went on a nationwide strike. All right. President Reagan declared a national emergency to continue controls on certain exports after Congress failed to renew the pertinent law. President George W. Okay, of course. Democrats have refused to give Trump $5.7 billion he's demanding for this border. So there's no end game to this, but declaring a national emergency could allow him to draw on funding that's already been approved by Congress. The National Emergencies Act requires the president to specify which provisions of the law he plans to use. There are other provisions that he could use. So, I mean, Trump should give them 2 or 3 more offers. Should give them 2 or 3 more offers, and then use the national. And then what will take place is he should say, "Look, I offered you this, I offered you that, I offered you this. You didn't even negotiate. So I'm just going to do what I want to do." I do agree there. I do think there has to be more offers because you have to, from a public relations perspective, you have to show the country that Democrats just don't. They're just being petulant, and then they're like, "Oh my God." The other day, someone said, "Oh, well, Trump supporters should work for free in support." It's like, why don't Democrats work for free? They're the ones who are prolonging this, not Trump. I love how the media is like, well, it's all Trump's fault, It's not Democrats. Democrats aren't even talking. At least he's negotiating. It's like, sorry, he was elected president. The White House said Thursday it's considering using $13.9 billion in funding Congress passed last year for various Army Corps of Engineers projects that have been allocated but not spent. And that's not even talking about the unobligated funds he could tap into, which are hundreds of billions. Well, over 100 billion, possibly over what 288 is one article I read. Billion. They're given so much money that they just have money that they don't even spend. Well, they're probably saving it if haven't, who knows why there's an unobligated. They probably just want all that money saved up. Anyway, the White House said it's considering using a $13.9 billion in funding Congress passed last year for various army. So if they do that, then Democrats get nothing for their constituents. Do you see what I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen? Ladies and gentlemen, do you see what I'm getting at? This is really important. He bypasses Congress. If he bypasses Congress, then Democrats give up a chance at negotiating. Don't you want to negotiate citizenship for your constituents? Don't you want your constituents to be able to have their voice heard? Don't you want to push for policy objectives that will help your voters? Why aren't Democrats doing that? That's the question. Why aren't Democrats doing that? Then you have like all of these people who it's like they live to condemn. They live to condemn, absolutely live to condemn. That's all they do, and they make things up. And they have the media. The media is composed primarily of people who loved Obama. When something took place under President Obama's, I'm not even going to get into it because it's such a touchy topic. And, it's like YouTube policies. You don't even have to be in the wrong. The media can completely fabricate everything. And then suddenly it's just churning the emotional locomotive. Democrats are an emotional locomotive of condemnation, judgment, devoid of compassion, devoid of forgiveness. It's all about making they love, and I saw this on Twitter too. They want to hurt and humiliate because they think they're fighting against humiliation, when in reality, they're just people siding with the local bully to make themselves feel better. Sometimes you'll see a bully, and then you'll see people around the bully not doing anything, not saying anything, not using logic, but just saying, well, the guy getting tormented must have deserved it. So then when you have people who lose their job or lose their livelihood or are humiliated in the public square, that's okay because they're fighting against the oligarchy, man. They're fighting for what's right. But then Bernie Sanders is cheated and it's a Russian plot, and they're okay with that. You can't find a more absurd media or political party or ideology than what's found on the left today. You cannot fight. It's absurd. It lacks logic because it's called hypocrisy. When President Obama presides over protests, I'm not even going to get too into it because of YouTube policies. but protests of certain of people protesting for their ancestral lands. And President Obama stays quiet, and Slate and Gizmodo and the Daily Beast and all of these pantheons of moral perfection. They don't say one word about atrocities taking place and barbarism. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not even going to get into it because of the YouTube policies and all that. And then something happens on a video, and oh my God, look! President Trump told people to do something bad. But then if you were on a conservative or Sam Harris or Bill Maher and you're saying, well, yeah, people do bad things because of this thought process. Oh my God, you can't say that. Inga Hicks, thank you. Ramla Farah, thank you. Like, I'm cool. I'm down with logic. I'm down with reason. They're bad on conservatives. They're bad liberals. But the dominant thought structure is, these ridiculous, nonsensical theories that people actually have turned into reality. It's like there's no more logic anymore in the United States of America. You can find logic. You can find logic. There are great places on YouTube, but and there's certain writers and certain very few publications but everything is just, oh my God, let's point at this person or this incident and let's just, humiliate anyone we can so we can feel good about ourselves, while forgetting that President Obama presided over far worse. Press 1 if you think Nancy Pelosi should. Oh, actually, some people are pressing 1 now. Okay, press 3. Press 3 if you think Nancy Pelosi should negotiate with Trump to help her own constituents. Press 3 if you think Nancy Pelosi should negotiate with Trump to help her own constituents. Exactly. Press 4 if you know she will not negotiate because she does not care about her own constituents. Press 4 if you know she will not negotiate because she doesn't care. And Democrats demand votes and loyalty without any exact. Yes, I love it. They don't care. They don't care because they can get votes. Look, let me tell you this. Let me tell you this, and I have a great deal of respect for Mike at Humanist Report, even though he really doesn't like me at all for some reason. I don't know why. And I offered to challenge him to a debate, but he will not debate me, nor will anyone at the Young Turks. And I, have all respect for Kyle Kalinske and Cenk Uygur, and a great deal of respect for all of them. And I would love to debate any, but you know why they cannot debate me and they will never debate me? Because I'll ask them a simple question. Why hasn't Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez drafted any Medicare for All legislation? Da, na, 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 na. Na 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 dun 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 dun. What is? She was never serious about it to begin with. What is? She really doesn't care. Or, just turn this into a question for Jeopardy, but Nobody in Congress has drafted any Medicare for all legislation, yet they are going to fight the oligarchy with this. They went into the House. They won the House. I didn't think. One of the reasons I said, well, on the big things I call them, Clinton losing the election, I was like, okay, and almost everything I've said has turned out the past 2 years. But I'm not omnipotent. I'm wrong sometimes. More often, I'm right. But anyway, I didn't think that people would be deceived by Democrats, but they were again. And then a lot will be deceived again in 2020, but less. There will be less people who drink, the spiked punch. AOC, all the wonderful, yes, honey, we'll stop the, all of that stuff. They're supposed to have come into the House with legislation ready to vote for. Can somebody draft any Medicare for all legislation? Why aren't people in the House doing that? That's the whole point of that. Why they won. They won because they told voters they were going to abolish ICE. Lie. That they were going to implement Medicare for all. Bigger lie. They're not going to go into 2020 running on higher taxes, both corporate and income tax. And the Mercatus study says double to triple. But even if you don't agree, astronomically high, exponentially high taxes, whatever. Tax rates increasing by 10, 20, 30%. They're not going to go into 2020. Forget about double to triple. You think they're going to go into 2020 with a 10% tax hike or 20? No. They were playing their voters just like Nancy Pelosi is playing even the centrist Democrats. Centrist Democrats want citizenship. Press 5 if you think the Yahtzee. The Yahtzee. Remember Abby Normal and the Young Frankenstein. You gave an abnormal brain. What is socialism for $20, HA? Alpha World Watch. Thank you. Thank you. The Yahtzee. Thank you. Alpha World Watch. Thank you. So, I mean, you have a situation here where there are a bunch of frauds. They talk a big game, and now they're going after people. I don't even want to get into it, but I mean, they're going after people now. Simply, it's like every single day, the liberal outrage machine gets exposed for what it is, and it's like it still keeps on going. It still keeps on going. It never ends. It never ends. It absolutely never ends. It never, ever, ever ends. So wait, let's see. Trump needs to, within the next, he has to, within the next month, he needs to offer 2 more, and he needs to actually, I think, offer, discussion of citizenship. Just put it on the table. Amnesty. Just a discussion. Just to discuss that. I do. HA, do you worry about the damage Mueller and the Russian hoaxes have done to this nation? As Billy divided us all, 2020 will be brutal. GOP must get behind Trump and fight for this MAGA agenda. Patriot 95, thank you so very much. And I appreciate you always watching, and I agree with you. I think we'll always be divided because we have 320 million people who live in this country. Becky Pamphlet, I can't. I'm actually trying to find people who disagree with me, but let's see. Oh no, Trump does not own the shutdown at all. Actually, it's Pelosi who owns the shutdown. She is what, Speaker of the House? It's on her to negotiate. Patriot 95, 2020 will be brutal, but not for Trump voters. It will be horrendous if you're a Democrat or a progressive. It will be absolutely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. So Patriot 95, I think that I think that at the end of the day, the left is just going to dismantle any possibility of winning. And then you have William Barr, who hopefully will do what Sessions should have done and form special counsels. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very, very much. To my super chat, thank you so much. I do appreciate your support. And thank you. Have a great, great, great Sunday. I will be back today, and Pelosi needs to negotiate. She owes her constituents that, which at the end of the day, they cheat their own constituents and they expect votes. Thank you so very much. God bless. I will see you all later today. Thank you.